There are moments in life when your honesty will feel like a curse. Times when you'll lay your soul bare, thinking it'll bring you peace, only to watch people twist your truth into a weapon. You'll speak your heart with trembling hands, hoping for understanding, but instead you'll get silence, or worse, betrayal. You thought the truth would set you free, but instead it chained you to the judgment of those who never cared to understand your story. Let's get real. This world doesn't reward transparency, it punishes it. People don't always want the truth. They want comfort. They want control. And when your truth threatens that, they will turn on you like you never mattered. They'll use your vulnerability as evidence to call you weak. They'll take your trauma, your fears, your confessions, and paint you as unstable, emotional, too much. But I'm here to tell you, you don't owe your truth to everyone. Some people haven't earned the right to hear your deepest thoughts. And silence can be a fortress. There is power in mystery. There is strength in holding back, because every truth doesn't need to be spoken, and not every truth deserves an audience. Let me tell you something real. When you finally muster up the courage to tell your truth, you imagine that the world will meet you with open arms. You think the people in your life will hear your voice, feel your pain, understand your struggle, and hold it with grace. But the moment you open that door, reality walks in. And sometimes reality is cold. The truth is, people don't always want to see you for who you really are. They want to keep you in the box they built for you, a box that's neat, manageable, and comfortable for them. The moment your truth doesn't fit that box, they get uncomfortable, they back away, they judge you, and you start questioning yourself, wondering if it was wrong to be honest. But it wasn't wrong, it was just real. And real scares people who are used to pretending. Your truth is weighty. It's heavy because it's filled with everything you've carried, your trauma, your failures, your dreams, your scars. And not everybody has the emotional strength to hold it. Some people are still drowning in their own pain. And when you hand them yours, they don't lift you, they drop you. Not because you're not worthy, but because they don't have the strength. See, it's not about you being too much. It's about them being too little. Too little in empathy, in depth, in capacity. They can't meet you where you are because they're afraid to go there themselves. So they stay on the surface and call you dramatic. They avoid depth and label you difficult. But don't mistake their lack of understanding for a reflection of your worth. You are not too much. You are just too real for people who live fake. And then there are the ones who pretend to care, the ones who say, you can tell me anything. But the moment you show them something raw, something unpolished, they flinch, they recoil like honesty is poison. They don't want your truth. They want your silence. They want the version of you that's digestible, easy, watered down. And when you don't play that role, when you refuse to shrink for their comfort, they start to push you away. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you showed them a mirror and they didn't like what it reflected. You told your story and it reminded them of their own story, the one they've buried deep. And now they don't see you as brave, they see you as a threat. Because if you can be that honest, what excuse do they have for living a lie? There are people who will hear your truth and use it against you. That's the harshest lesson of them all. You trusted them with a piece of your soul, and they turned it into a weapon. They waited for the moment you were vulnerable, and then they struck, not with fists, but with silence, with gossip, with distance. They took your honesty and painted it as weakness. They spun your confession into a rumor, and that betrayal, it cuts deeper than any blade. Because it wasn't a stranger who did it. It was someone you loved, someone you thought understood you. But understand this, your truth didn't betray you, they did. And their reaction doesn't mean your truth was wrong. It means they were never the safe place you thought they were. And then there's the guilt of feeling like maybe you shouldn't have spoken up. Maybe you should have stayed quiet. Maybe you should have kept pretending. You start to question your own voice. Was I too honest? Was I too vulnerable? No. You are just too real for a world that's addicted to fake smiles and shallow conversations. You are brave enough to tell the truth in a world that rewards lies. That's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. But pride doesn't always feel good when it's accompanied by loneliness. And that's the trap. That's when you need to remind yourself, authenticity comes with isolation. Not everyone will walk with you when you walk in truth. Some will leave, some will judge, and some will fall silent. Let them. You are not responsible for how people handle your truth. Let me say that again for the people in the back. You are not responsible for how people respond to the real you. That's on them. Your job isn't to dilute yourself so they can digest you easier. Your job is to stand in your truth and let the chips fall where they may, because the people who are meant for you, they won't run. They won't flinch. They'll sit with you in your darkness without trying to fix it. They'll hear the worst parts of your story and still believe in your light. Those are your people, not the ones who disappear at the first sign of discomfort. Sometimes your truth makes people uncomfortable because it exposes their lies. Your strength threatens their weakness. Your healing shines a light on their wounds. And instead of learning from you, they resent you. That's not your burden to carry. You didn't tell your story to make people feel small. You told it to breathe, to release, to finally let go of the weight you've been carrying alone. And if they take it personally, that's a reflection of their shadow, not your shine. Keep shining, keep speaking, but learn this lesson well. Protect your truth like it's gold, because it is. The truth is, you don't have to tell everyone everything, not because you're hiding, but because you're wise. Wisdom is knowing when to speak, and more importantly, to whom. There's power in discretion. There's strength in silence. You don't owe people your vulnerability. You don't owe them access to your wounds. Some people are too careless to hold that kind of power, and giving it to them is like handing a match to someone standing in a room full of gasoline. They'll burn everything down, including you, and then call it your fault. So no, don't always tell the truth. Not because you're being fake, but because you're protecting your peace. In this world, your truth is a gift, not a requirement. You are not obligated to unwrap it for everyone who knocks. Some doors are better left closed. Some people are better left in the dark, because light isn't always welcomed. Some folks prefer the shadows. They hide there. And when you bring your light, your truth, your story, you expose them. And people who are hiding don't like exposure. So they fight you, they silence you, they blame you, but don't stop being you. Don't stop being real. Just learn to protect your truth like a treasure. Guard it, share it with the worthy, and let the rest wonder. Because not everyone can handle your truth, and that's not your problem. That's their limitation. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is say nothing at all. Not because you don't have something to say, but because what you say is sacred. And you don't throw sacred things into a room full of noise. You learn to hold your peace, because not every battle deserves your voice. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is strategy. It's patience. It's control. When you're silent, you're not surrendering. You're learning. You're giving the world a chance to reveal itself. And believe me, it always does. When you stop talking, people show you who they really are. The masks fall off. The noise clears. And in that stillness, you begin to see things you missed when you were too busy explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to speak to prove you're right. You don't need to argue to prove you're strong. Real power is knowing who you are and refusing to let the noise define you. You ever notice how the loudest people are usually the most insecure? They talk because silence scares them. It exposes their lack of depth. But when you're grounded in truth, you don't need to raise your voice. You let your actions speak. You let your energy speak. You walk into a room and your silence carries more weight than their shouting ever could, because your silence is not empty, it's full. full of confidence, full of self-respect, full of boundaries. And when people can't read you, they fear you, because silence is power they can't interpret. You're not being passive when you choose silence. You're being selective. You're choosing your battles. You're deciding not to entertain foolishness. The moment you engage in every argument, every insult, every provocation, you give your power away. You become predictable. They know exactly how to trigger you, how to break you, how to throw you off balance. But when you learn the art of silence, you become untouchable. You stop reacting, you stop explaining, you stop performing for people who aren't worthy of your energy. And that's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's knowing who you are so deeply that you no longer need validation to feel whole. Silence doesn't mean you're okay. It means you're processing. It means you're protecting your peace. It means you've realized that your voice is too powerful to be thrown into empty spaces. And let's be honest, not everyone deserves your thoughts. Not everyone is mature enough to handle what's on your mind. Some people only listen to respond, not to understand. And others, well, they just want to use your words against you. So you stay quiet, you protect your soul. And in that silence, you build strength. You learn to hear your own voice over the noise of the world. That voice inside you, that's where your real power lives. You ever sit in silence and just watch? Really watch. You start to see people differently. You start to hear what isn't being said. Because silence sharpens your vision. When you stop talking, you start noticing. Who's real? Who's fake? Who talks too much and says too little? Who listens and who waits just to reply? The loud world starts to quiet down and the truth starts to echo louder than any conversation you ever had. Silence is clarity, it's healing. It's your reset button in a world that's always trying to rush you. And when you're silent long enough, you realize you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to be grounded enough to let your presence speak. There's a reason warriors meditate, a reason lions don't roar at every movement in the grass. Because power doesn't need to prove itself. Power observes, power conserves. Power chooses when to strike and when to simply walk away. You are not weak because you didn't clap back. You are not soft because you didn't argue. You are not less than because you held your tongue. No, you are more. You are deeper. You are wiser. And in that silence, you own yourself. People can't twist your words if you never gave them any. They can't argue with you if you never stepped into the ring. And sometimes silence is the most eloquent form of resistance there is. They'll try to shame you for it, call you distant, cold, aloof. But don't let their discomfort shake you. People fear what they can't control. And silence makes people uneasy because it forces them to sit with themselves. It forces them to reflect. And most people don't want to do that. They want distraction. They want drama. They want noise. But you've evolved. You've grown past the chaos. You've outgrown the need to react. And when you stop feeding the drama, you stop being a character in their story. You start writing your own. Quietly, purposefully, authentically. You don't need to speak to defend who you are. You don't need to convince anybody of your worth. Let your results speak. Let your growth speak. Let your peace be your protest. Let your silence be your statement. Because when you go quiet, people start listening. When you withdraw, people start watching. And when you stop engaging, people start wondering. That's the beauty of silence. It confuses those who expected chaos. It frustrates those who live off reactions and empowers you to move on without leaving pieces of yourself behind in every argument. So if you're walking through something right now and you feel the urge to explain yourself, don't. If someone is pushing your buttons, trying to pull you into a storm, don't go. Just be still, just be silent. Your peace is more valuable than their opinions. Your inner calm is more powerful than their noise. And the people who truly see you, they don't need 1,000 words. They'll hear everything you do because your silence speaks volumes. When it comes from a place of strength, not fear. You are allowed to be quiet. You are allowed to protect your space. You are allowed to sit in your power without performing for anyone. Let them think what they want. Let them fill in the blanks with their assumptions. Your silence is not for them, it's for you. It's your armor, it's your sanctuary, it's your strategy. So hold it tight, let it shield you, let it grow you. And when the time is right, when your spirit is ready, and when you do, your words will carry weight. Not because you shouted, but because you waited. You held back. You protected your fire until it was time to burn bright. That's not cowardice. That's power. The truth is sacred, but it's not safe in every hand. You got to understand that. Some people don't want your truth to understand you. They want it to use against you, to twist it, to weaponize it. They'll take your honesty and craft a lie out of it. And that's the part that hurts the most. When you gave them something real, something raw, and they turned it into ammunition. You were vulnerable. You opened your heart thinking they'd protect it, but they were just taking notes for the day you'd need defending. And when the time came, they didn't stand beside you, they pointed at you. That's why you can't hand your truth out like candy. You got to protect it like treasure. Because in the wrong hands, your truth becomes the very thing that breaks you. There are people who study you just to betray you better. People who pretend to care so they can get closer. Close enough to see where you're soft, where you're scarred, where you're healing. And once they know, they don't offer a bandage, they press on the bruise. That's why it's not always wise to be fully transparent. Not everyone is a safe place. Some are broken themselves, and broken people break others. Especially those who still carry light. They see your light, and instead of being warmed by it, they feel exposed by it. Your honesty reveals their dishonesty. Your openness reminds them of how closed off they are. So what do? They lash out. They smear your name. They use your truth like a sword, not knowing it came from your pain. You ever tell someone a secret in confidence and later feel like that truth is walking around the room without your permission? That gut feeling? When you realize your story isn't yours anymore, it's theirs now. They own it, twist it, manipulate it. They repeat it out of context, adding pieces that were never there. And suddenly, you're not just dealing with your truth. You're dealing with their version of it. And once your truth is out of your hands, it's out of your control. That's why silence can sometimes be your greatest protection. That's why you got to vet hearts before you share yours. Because not everyone who smiles at you wants to see you whole. People say, just be honest, but they don't talk about the cost of that honesty. They don't talk about what happens when your honesty meets a heart that's bitter, envious, or cruel. They don't talk about how truth can be used like a blade in the hands of someone who never wanted to understand you in the first place. They just wanted to judge. And that's what makes betrayal cut so deep. It's not the lie, it's the fact that they used your truth to build it. So you learn to speak less, you learn to weigh who's listening. You don't stop being real, but you get wise about who gets access to the real you. Truth is powerful, but like all power, it needs discipline. You wouldn't hand a weapon to someone reckless. So don't hand your truth to someone careless. Don't let them turn your vulnerability into a show. Don't give them the blueprint to your soul when they only want to tear it apart. Let your truth be sacred. Let it be earned. Because once it's out, it's no longer just about what you said. It's about how they carry what you said. And some people carry your truth like a trophy, not a responsibility. They show it off, brag about knowing you deeply, but they never honored the cost of what it took to say it in the first place. And here's the thing. They'll paint you as dramatic for wanting privacy. They'll call you closed off for protecting your wounds. But don't let that pressure you into oversharing. Your silence isn't weakness, it's self-respect. Your boundaries aren't walls, they're gates. And not everyone deserves a key, especially not the ones who knock just to see how you built yourself. People love access until they realize access comes with responsibility. And when they don't want the responsibility of handling your truth with care, they'll throw it around like it was never precious to begin with. But that's on them, not you. There's a difference between honesty and exposure. Honesty is controlled, exposure is reckless. Learn to know the line. You don't owe anyone full access to your mind, your past, your process, especially not people who treat your growth like gossip. The ones who smile in front of you but speak your story behind your back. The ones who clap when you're honest but disappear when it costs them to defend that honesty. No, your truth isn't for everybody. It's for the few who are strong enough to hold it without trying to change it, cheapen it, or cash it in. You are not obligated to explain your journey to those who never walked a step of it. Your silence is your shield because your story is still sacred. And sacred things aren't tossed into the crowd. Sacred things are revealed in safety, in trust, in love. And if you haven't found those things in someone, don't hand them your heart disguised as a confession. Don't let them unwrap your truth like a gift only to throw it away when it no longer entertains them. Guard your words. Guard your soul. Because once the wrong person knows too much about you, it's not just what they do with it, it's what they do to you with it. Sometimes the pain we carry isn't from the trauma itself, but from who we trusted with the story. We didn't just get hurt by what happened, we got hurt by who we told. Because we thought they'd protect it. We thought they'd see our truth and love us harder, but instead they judged. They talked, they left, and that's the heartbreak. So you become quiet, not because you're hiding, but because you're healing. You become more selective, not because you're bitter, but because you've seen what happens when you're not. And with time, you realize that the truth is powerful, but only when it's placed in the right hands. So be careful who you bleed in front of. Be careful who you allow to see the cracks in your armor. Not everyone is there to help you heal. Some just want to see how deep the wound is. And when you learn that, you don't stop telling the truth. You just stop telling it to everyone. You learn to hold your truth close. You learn to share it in rooms where respect lives. You learn to value the quiet spaces, the safe spaces, the trusted few, because your truth deserves more than a listener. It deserves a guardian, someone who holds it like a promise, not a secret, someone who honors it, not exposes it. That's where healing begins, with wisdom, with discernment, and with the power of protecting what's yours. There comes a point in your life when you've got to stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for your greatness. You don't need to justify who you are just to make someone else feel comfortable with your existence. You don't need to explain why you're quiet, why you're healing, why you walked away, why you changed, why you chose peace over chaos. Your truth doesn't need an audience to be real. You don't need a courtroom to validate your heart. Some people will never understand your decisions, and that's okay. You didn't make those decisions for their approval. You made them for your survival, for your peace, for your soul. You know your why, you know your story. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is keep walking without giving anyone a map. You are not a question that needs answering. You are not a puzzle piece trying to fit into every frame. You are not obligated to explain your scars to people who never stayed through the bleeding. You don't owe explanations to those who watched you suffer but never offered a hand. You don't owe clarity to those who made noise during your silence but never understood the weight of your quiet. They didn't see the nights you cried. They didn't hear the prayers you whispered. They didn't carry the burden, yet they expect the blueprint? No. You are not here to convince the world of your worth. You're here to believe in it so deeply, so fiercely, that the world either aligns or steps aside. People want access to your reasoning, not because they care, but because they want control. They want to poke holes in your peace. They want to challenge the boundaries that protect you. And when you say no, when you walk away, when you choose better, they look at you confused, offended even, but they never once asked what it took for you to get here. They never asked what it cost you to choose healing over habit. So let them be confused. Let them wonder. Let them create their stories. Because their misunderstanding is not your responsibility. You don't need to water down your purpose just so someone else can sip from your cup without choking. Protect your decisions like sacred ground. They were made in fire, You earned them. The moment you start explaining your value, you're inviting people to debate it. And not everyone deserves that kind of power. Not everyone deserves that kind of closeness. Some will use your openness to invalidate you. They'll say you're overreacting, or you're too sensitive, or you've changed. As if evolving is a crime. As if protecting your peace is an insult. But the truth is, the more you heal, the less explaining you do. You stop offering pieces of your heart as evidence. You stop arguing with people who never cared to understand in the first place. You realize that your presence is the explanation. Your growth is the statement. And your peace is the mic drop. There's a power in not defending yourself. There's a strength in letting people believe what they want, because you're too focused on becoming who you were born to be. You don't need to rewind your journey for someone who only showed up during your highlights. You don't need to break down your past for people who weren't strong enough to stand in your truth. If they didn't show up for the process, they don't get to judge the result. If they can't love the healed you, they weren't equipped for the broken you. You are not a movie that needs a plot twist for validation. You're a masterpiece that's still in progress. And that alone is enough. It's a trap. This need to be understood. This urge to explain every move, every emotion, every transformation. But you got to wake up and realize that not everyone gets it, because not everyone was meant to. Some people only love you when you're silent, when you're small, when you're serving their comfort. The moment you rise, the moment you set boundaries, the moment you say, I deserve more, they start questioning your character. But don't fold. Don't shrink. You don't need to respond. You don't need to fix what they refuse to see. Let your life speak. Let your peace speak louder than your words. Let your healing do the talking. You've been explaining yourself your whole life. To family who didn't understand your dreams. To friends who couldn't handle your pain. To lovers who were threatened by your light. And every time you tried to explain, you chipped away at your truth to make it easier to swallow. But what if I told you, you don't have to do that anymore? What if I told you, you're allowed to just be, without the footnotes, without the backstory? Just be, fully, freely, loudly, quietly, whatever you are, be it with no apology. Because the people who love you won't ask you to explain your soul. They'll hold it. You are not for everyone. And that's not rejection, that's refinement. That's God saying, I didn't make you to blend in, I made you to stand firm. Some people will misunderstand your silence. Others will misinterpret your fire. But none of that changes your worth. None of that makes you less. Your truth is still your truth, even when no one claps, even when no one nods, even when the room goes quiet after you speak it. Stand on it anyway. You weren't made to perform, you were made to live. And every time you choose peace over performance, you remind the world, I am valid, even when I'm not explained. The freedom you seek is not in people finally understanding you. It's in you no longer needing them to. That's real freedom. That's when the chains break. That's when you stop rehearsing answers in your head. That's when you stop explaining your worth to people who will never see it because they don't have the vision to. You are not made for everyone to get. You're made to be who you are. Fully, authentically, unapologetically. And the people who matter, the ones who are meant to walk with you, they won't need a reason to stay. They'll stay because they see you. Not what you've done, not what you've explained, just you. So breathe. Let go of the pressure to explain. Let go of the need to be understood. You don't have to unpack your soul for people who don't have the room to carry it. You don't need to justify your joy, your boundaries, your silence, or your fire. You were created with purpose, not permission. Walk in that, talk in that, live in that, and never again forget, you don't need to explain yourself to be valid. Your existence alone is the proof. Your peace is your birthright. And your story, it's still being written, with or without their understanding. There are moments in life so raw, so pure, that speaking on them too early, too loudly can strip them of their beauty. Some things are not meant to be shared with the world. Not because you're hiding, not because you're afraid, but because they are sacred, because they are yours, because they are still forming, still growing in the quiet corners of your soul. Not everything needs an audience. Not every revelation needs applause. Sometimes the most powerful things you carry are the ones you hold in silence, in reverence, in deep soul-level respect. What God whispers to you in private isn't meant to be screamed from the rooftops. Some blessings need time in the soil before they ever see the light of day. And the world, it's not always gentle with things it doesn't understand. It will question. It will tear apart. It will dissect something that was never meant to be explained. That's why you protect it. That's why you shield it. Because the sacred is not for spectacle. It's for transformation. See, we live in a world that constantly tells us to share everything, to prove, to post, to announce. But the more you grow, the more you realize real power is quiet. Real peace is private. Some things are not meant for validation. They're meant for preservation. When something sacred is exposed too soon, it's like pulling a flower from the soil before it blooms. It dies in the hands of the curious. It wilts under the eyes of the envious. So you learn to keep certain victories in your heart. You learn to cherish private moments without broadcasting them. You learn to protect what matters before the world has a chance to poke holes in it. The most beautiful chapters of your life don't need to be shared to be real. You don't need a stage to make something significant. Sometimes the most meaningful growth happens in complete silence, behind closed doors, with no audience. Just you and God. And that's the difference between performance and purpose. Performance wants to be seen. Purpose wants to be fulfilled. When you live from a sacred place, you stop needing eyes on your every move. You stop needing applause for your every effort. You understand that there are things too holy for commentary, too tender for public opinion. You might be building something no one knows about. You might be healing from something no one ever saw, and that's okay. That's sacred. It's not secret, it's sacred. There's a difference. Secrets are rooted in shame. Sacredness is rooted in wisdom. It's knowing what to share, when to share it, and who is worthy of hearing it. Because not everyone deserves access to your depth. Not everyone has earned the right to stand on the holy ground of your heart. There are dreams you haven't told anyone about, not because you doubt them, but because you know the world isn't ready to hear them. You know the moment you speak them aloud, they'll be met with fear, resistance, even ridicule. And so you protect them, not out of weakness, but out of strength, out of discernment, out of understanding that the sacred doesn't need defense, it needs covering. You don't owe anyone your innermost visions until they are ready to be seen. Some things are growing in the dark. Some breakthroughs are still under construction. And that's a beautiful thing. Let them grow. Let them rise in silence. Let them become strong enough to withstand the storm before you reveal them. You're not hiding. You're honoring. You're protecting the future version of yourself that's being formed right now. In silence, in stillness, in sacred space. There are relationships you don't talk about, not because they're secret, but because they're sacred. There's a love you're nurturing, a bond you're honoring, a journey you're taking with someone that doesn't need to be broadcasted to the world to be valid. The world has made love into a spectacle, but real love, real connection, it's quiet, it's private, it's sacred. It doesn't need a spotlight, it needs protection. The more you love someone, the more you realize not everything should be shared, not every argument, not every joy, not every milestone. Some moments are just for you, just for them, just for God. You're not hiding, you're honoring the depth of something real, something that doesn't need validation to exist. And that same principle applies to your healing, your growth, your struggles. Everyone doesn't need a seat at the table of your transformation. Everyone doesn't need a front row view of your pain. There are some battles you fight in private because that's where your strength is forged. In the quiet, in the dark, in the stillness. You don't need to share the whole story for it to be valid. You don't need to explain the process for it to be real. Healing is messy. Growth is personal. And sometimes the most sacred thing you can do is keep it between you and God until you're ready. And when you are ready, when you do speak, you'll speak from power, not pain. From clarity, not confusion. From purpose, not pressure. There are revelations you receive that are meant to change you, not entertain others. Not everything God gives you is meant for the crowd. Some things are just for you, meant to humble you, shape you, correct you, lead you. And when you share them too soon, you rob them of their ability to do the very work they were sent to do. You dilute the message by giving it away before it matures in you. So you learn to sit with the revelation. You learn to let it break you, remake you, rebuild you. And once it has done its work in your soul, only then do you share, and even then, only with those who are ready to receive. Because what's sacred should never be placed in careless hands. You have every right to keep your joy sacred, to protect your peace, to shield your healing, to guard your goals. You are not being selfish, you are being wise. The world can be loud, demanding, invasive, but you get to choose who gets access. You get to decide what's shared and what's sealed. What's open and what's off limits. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's necessary because the sacred is where your identity is formed. It's where your voice grows strong. It's where your heart finds clarity. Don't let the noise of this world trick you into trading your sacred space for likes, comments, or temporary applause. You're building something eternal, something lasting, something divine. Some things are too sacred to speak on until they're fully lived, and even then they may never be spoken aloud. That's the beauty of it. That's the reverence of it. To carry something inside of you that no one else fully understands, but you know, it's real, it's alive, it's growing, and that's enough. That's more than enough, because the sacred doesn't need validation. It just needs to be protected. Honored, lived, fully, freely, fiercely, in silence, in strength, in the sacredness of your truth. There comes a time in your life when you have to stop letting other people tell your story. Because if you don't, they will. They'll write your character in their script, cast you in roles you never auditioned for, and narrate your life through the lens of their own misunderstanding. And if you stay silent too long, their version becomes the truth the world believes. Their assumptions become your identity. Their judgment becomes your reflection. And let me tell you, there is no peace in being misunderstood. There is no strength in letting someone else define you. So you better stand up, look in the mirror, and decide, this is my story, and I will be the one to tell it. Because when you don't control the narrative, you leave your legacy in the hands of people who never had your best interests at heart. People will see you fall and call you a failure, not knowing you got back up stronger every time. They'll witness a moment of anger and label you bitter, not realizing you were breaking inside. They'll take your silence and say you're weak, never understanding how much strength it took to say nothing. This is why it's dangerous to stay quiet for too long. Not every battle should be broadcasted, but if you never speak, if you never reclaim your voice, the world will continue to misunderstand who you are. And the longer that goes on, the more those lies become your image. And suddenly, you're trying to outrun a reputation you never built. Trying to undo a label you never accepted. Trying to fix a story you didn't write. So say it with your chest, this is who I am. This is where I've been. This is what I've overcome. Let them hear it from your lips, not their whispers. Every strong person you admire once had to take the pen out of someone else's hand. They had to stop letting broken people describe a healed journey. They had to take back their own power and say, let me tell it how it really happened. Because the truth is, people love to narrate your struggle, but skip your survival. They love to highlight your past, but ignore your progress. They frame your life around your mistakes, but forget the growth that came after. And if you don't interrupt that narrative, if you don't speak up and show up, you'll be living under someone else's fiction instead of your own truth. You were not made to be edited. You were not made to be rewritten. You were made to tell your story in your voice with your power. And the moment you do, the world has no choice but to listen. You've got to understand, silence is not always noble when it costs you your identity. Humility is not about shrinking, it's about knowing your worth and moving like it. You're not arrogant for correcting a lie. You're not prideful for telling your truth. You're protecting your peace. You're guarding your name. You're keeping your story sacred. And yes, some people will be uncomfortable with that. They'll accuse you of being too bold, too loud, too direct. But what they're really saying is they preferred it when they could define you. They liked it better when you stayed small. But you've outgrown that silence. You've outgrown the need to make others comfortable with your shrinking. This season is about standing in your truth, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble. Because the moment you stop letting them speak for you, you start hearing your own power again. Let me tell you what happens when you don't control the narrative. People will remember you for your worst day, not your best. They'll define you by one chapter and ignore the entire book. They'll turn a temporary season into your permanent identity. And if you're not careful, you'll start to believe them. You'll shrink to fit their version of you. You'll quiet your voice just to keep peace that was never real. You'll perform for an audience that never clapped for you. And all the while, your truth, your real, unfiltered, blood-earned truth sits in the background, waiting to be told. Don't let them silence it. Don't let them distort it. You've walked through too much, survived too much, grown too much to let someone else narrate your life. You know who you are. You know what you've been through. You know what it cost you to get here. So don't let someone who only saw the highlight reel define your journey. Don't let someone who left you in the valley tell the world how you got to the mountaintop. They weren't there for the tears. They didn't feel the weight. They didn't fight the demons you had to face at 2 a.m. just to make it to 8 a.m. And yet they're writing your story like they lived it. That's why you must speak. That's why you must own your voice. Because nobody can tell it like you can. Nobody has the scars to match your testimony. Nobody else carries your truth with the same fire. So take the mic, take the pen, take the power back. This is your life. Speak on it. You don't need to go online and explain everything to everybody. This isn't about convincing the masses. It's about honoring your truth. It's about choosing who gets access to your story. Because yes, you can control the narrative without performing. You can set the record straight without putting on a show. You can correct the lie without begging for understanding. You are not responsible for fixing their perception. You're responsible for standing in your reality. And that's where your peace comes from, not from being understood by everyone, but from being honest with yourself. When you know who you are, you stop chasing approval. When you own your story, you stop living under the weight of theirs. And that freedom, that peace, it's priceless. People will talk anyway. That's the truth. Whether you speak or stay silent, they'll still form opinions, they'll still twist stories. But the difference is when you speak, you anchor yourself. You draw a line in the sand and say, this is my truth. And no matter what storms come, no matter how the winds blow, that line remains. You don't control the noise, but you do control your voice. And the moment you start using it, the lies begin to lose their grip. The rumors start to die. The false narratives begin to unravel. Because truth, when spoken with conviction, has the power to shatter every lie. So speak up, even if it's just to yourself. Speak it in the mirror. Speak it in prayer. Speak it until you believe it again. Let them call it whatever they want. Ego, pride, drama. Let them misunderstand. Let them twist your courage into arrogance. That's their narrative. But you hold the truth. And truth doesn't need to scream to be powerful. It just needs to be owned. So walk in it, live in it, Protect it. Because when you control the narrative, you control your peace. You protect your future. You honor your journey. And the people meant to walk with you, they won't need the edited version of your story. They'll love you for the raw, real, honest version. The one who stood up, spoke out, and said, I refuse to let anyone else define me. You've heard the whispers. You've felt the weight of being misunderstood, of watching others narrate your story with broken lenses, half-truths, and assumptions that never came close to your reality. And now you know it is no longer your duty to stay silent. It is no longer noble to sit in the shadows while others paint your portrait with colors that don't belong to you. This life, your life, is not a public exhibit for the world to interpret freely. It's a sacred journey. And if you don't protect it, if you don't speak over it, if you don't rise up and own it, someone else will. Someone who never knew the depth of your pain, the strength behind your smile, or the war you fought just to stand tall. They will rewrite your truth to suit their comfort, their narrative, their agenda. But you weren't born to be anyone's version of almost, less than, or misunderstood. What you've been reminded of today is this: your voice is not a weapon, it's a shield. A shield against the lies, a shield against manipulation, a shield against people who think they know you because they saw a glimpse of a single moment in your journey. Your silence may have protected your peace for a time, but there comes a season where silence becomes surrender, where your truth left unspoken becomes distorted by others. And in those moments, you must rise, you must take the pen back, not to prove anything, not to perform, but to preserve, to protect the essence of who you really are, to make sure that when they speak your name, it carries the full weight of your resilience, your truth, and your authenticity, not their rumors. You've seen now that not everyone can handle your truth. Some people will twist it, fear it, or use it against you. That's why discernment matters. That's why sacred things must be guarded, not broadcasted. But even so, your truth deserves to live. It deserves to breathe. And when the wrong hands try to control your story, you don't need to argue. You just need to reclaim the narrative. Speak when it's time, be silent when it's wise. But never, ever let lies become your legacy. You don't owe explanations for your value. Your worth is not up for discussion. And your journey, your battles, your breakthroughs, your scars, is not anyone else's stage. It's your testimony. And that testimony is powerful. So stand tall, walk in your truth, guard it, honor it, and when the moment calls, speak it boldly, because no one can take away a truth you've already claimed, lived, and embodied. Your story is yours. And that, my friend, is your greatest strength. Thank you for listening. Thank you for holding space for this truth. May your voice never be silenced again. God bless you. Stay strong, stay grounded, and above all, stay true.